Hello and welcome to the Blockade Runner podcast number 109. My name is John, and with me this morning to talk about Star Wars video games is Ryan. Good morning, Ryan.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, E3, the big video game show, annual video game show was last week or earlier this last week. I don't know how you say that. But the Electronic Entertainment Expo is what that is.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of Star Wars video game news and footage and stuff like that. So we're going to focus on talking about Star Wars video games and what's on the horizon for Star Wars video games in 2019 and beyond. But before we do that, let's talk about beyond. Let's talk about 2020 real quick, because Star Wars Celebration is back in 2020. And just a few days ago, they announced the dates for Star Wars Celebration 2020 and also the ticket information. We knew Celebration would be in Anaheim in 2020, but that's all we knew. So, I'm loading the page now to see the dates. I should have had that open already, but it's August of 2020. And what are those dates? I'm on the page, August 2020, August 27th through 30th of 2020. So a little bit over a year away. Yeah. Breaking the tradition of doing Star Wars Celebration in April, but not for the first time. Usually celebrations in April. This time it's in August. So, what's your reaction to this, Ryan? What are your thoughts about Star Wars Celebration 2020 right now? What are you thinking?
I can't afford it right now. I'm hoping tickets and everything are still available next month for next paycheck. It was very sudden. And yeah, I mean, like, I definitely want to go. Yeah.
Cool. What do you think about it being in August though? Like, how doesn't matter to you, or?
Well, that's fine. Whatever.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
All the same to me.
Gotcha.
I have to take time off work no matter what. So it's never super convenient, but
yeah. I've gone to, well, first off, I think it makes sense to have it in August, because really it's kind of weird that they're doing another one just a year after, Star Wars Celebration Chicago. And so when they announced the dates as being in August of 2020, as much as that's like a little bit of a break from the norm, it kind of made sense too, just because it gives a little more space between Star Wars Celebration Chicago and in Anaheim. So, in that regard, it makes sense. The only U.S. celebration that I haven't gone to was Star Wars Celebration 2012 in Orlando. And that one was in August. And as you know, Ryan, and probably most listeners know, I'm a high school teacher, and the week that they did Celebration 2012 Orlando, it was the end of the first week of the school year. And like, we usually don't start on a Monday either. We start on like a Wednesday or something. So, or a Tuesday or whatever. So it's like a really weird time to take work off. Like, hi, I'm Mr., your teacher. And also like, see you later, because I'm going to a Star Wars thing. It's just weird,
Yeah.
So taking a day or two off of work is not a big deal, but at that specific time, it's a little bit odd. So I don't think this will be like that close to the beginning of my work year in 2020, but I guess I won't know for sure until later on down the road when we see the calendar for what my work calendar will be. But I'm going to go regardless, one way or another. I suppose it's possible I won't be at all 4 days of Celebration Anaheim, but I'll be there in some capacity. So
yeah.
Yeah,
and I'm at more of like a year-round school, so like our school year starts like first week of August, so this will give me plenty of time to kind of get acclimated and get my student teacher set up for success.
Oh wow, okay.
Provided I have one again. next school year. But
okay, cool. Yeah. So, it's like end of the summer, I guess, instead of, end of the spring sort of thing, but it should be cool. And, maybe that gives them a little more time too, in terms of figuring out what's on the horizon for Star Wars as well. We won't get another Star Wars movie until December of 2022. So this will be just a little over 2 years before there's a new Star Wars movie. So I don't think we'll be hearing too much about that, but, again, it's going to be a little bit of a different Star Wars celebration, I think. Just in, the first 3 were celebrating the prequel movies, and then we had a couple where, in between, where it was like, well, there's not really, there was Clone Wars or there was Star Wars Rebels or whatever, but it's like, not necessarily some big new movie to celebrate. So it'll be kind of like back to like one of those sort of celebrations, I feel like, versus the last 3, which have been very focused on the sequel trilogy or, other new movies coming out and stuff too. I feel like this one's going to be a little bit of an in-between. And there's a lot of thought as well that this celebration maybe is about sort of getting back on a schedule where, after this one, we can wait 2 years and then we'll have one in 2022 and then another one in 2024 and 2026. And that'll correspond with the movies that are coming out those years. So we'll see. But anyway, yeah, tickets go on sale on Friday, June 21st. So just a few days from now. And hopefully that will all go well. Yeah, I know the hotels go on sale that day too, and that's a big deal for people as well. I'm going to do what I did last time around, which is probably not book a hotel right away and through the Celebration hotel block, and then figure it out down the road. So either through doing an Airbnb or something like that. We'll see. So I probably won't hop on the hotel thing right away, but unless I can. I guess if I can book a room, I will. But the last time that was a nightmare, just trying to get in and get a hotel room. So we'll see. But as far as other Blockade runners who are going to be going, hopefully Chris will be there. Chris lives in LA, so he's like half an hour to an hour and a half down the road, depending on the time of day and what's going on with traffic in that area of the world. But
the 205.
Yeah. Is that right?
I don't know.
Oh, the 101. I think. I don't know which way you take to get to Anaheim from LA, but Van Nuys. What do we call him when we were in Orlando or when we were in Chicago? Van Nuys Chris or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, he'll be there hopefully. And I don't know about Dan yet. Sounds like we're not sure about you, Ryan, but hopefully you'll be there. Kevin talks about it, so we'll see. Hopefully we can get Kevin there. Kevin, this is we're publicly encouraging you. Come on, make it happen. And Caleb is definitely planning on going, so that's cool. Nice. And my brother and sister-in-law are planning on going as well. Again, they came in Chicago this year and had a blast. That was their first celebration, and they loved it. So they are planning on coming as well. So hopefully some assembly of our crew will be there in Anaheim in 2020. So exciting stuff. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, why don't we move on to talking about Star Wars video game announcements and what's going on as far as Star Wars video games go. There's actually quite a bit, and definitely more than we expected as far as news goes this week at E3. The only thing we expected or that we knew for sure we'd get is some Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order info. We definitely got some of that, and we'll start with that. But I guess before getting into the actual news, I just want to say, sort of pour one out or express a little disappointment, because I was really hoping there'd be some solid Nintendo Switch Star Wars announcements or information at E3, and there were none. There were zero.
Nope.
None.
Well, I mean, there was one.
What?
Like Lego.
Oh, okay. That was announced for Switch, wasn't it? Okay. Yeah. All right. Right on.
So.
All right, so there was a little something. Yeah, but we had to rely on Star Wars Celebration actually in Chicago for any other Switch info, because we do have Star Wars Pinball coming out later this year, so that'll be exciting too. But no other Switch news at E3. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll see what we can hope for down the road. But for now, let's talk about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. which we got a new trailer and we got a new gameplay demo as well.
Mhm.
So, and this was part of the Xbox conference. Is that right, Ryan?
It was part of the EA, EA's thing.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Whatever.
EA does their own E3 adjacent event called EA Play, right? And that's
Yeah, but like I don't I don't know how any of that stuff works, but like they put videos up online. Like is all I know. I think there was like a live stream, but then like I didn't actually watch the video until like after the fact. So, um yeah. But it was
yeah,
like the first actual gameplay we've seen, because previously at Celebration and all the teases and stuff were proof of concept in engine videos, or like cutscenes from the game, or tone pieces, whatever. But this was the first time we actually saw someone play through like a level in the game.
yeah, no, because I went to the Jedi Fallen Order panel at Star Wars Celebration, and it was definitely cool, and it definitely showed off, the characters and the story and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But you still really, I mean, they talked a little bit about sort of like what the gameplay experience would be like and that sort of thing, but really they just focused on the characters and the story, and you didn't see any kind of footage at all. So this was definitely cool, to get a feeling for what the game was like. So, but there is also a trailer as well, like a new trailer that actually has like footage in it too.
Mhm.
And that was part of it, and then like the longer gameplay demo. So from what I saw and found, and whatever you want to say, is like a 2-minute trailer. That was from, I think that was from the Xbox event, right?
Okay.
I think the gameplay demo maybe was, I don't know. It's how it's listed on YouTube, but I watched most of the Xbox event, which I don't have an Xbox, but it sounded pretty cool, interesting, whatever. So I watched it after the fact, and yeah, they definitely prominently featured this trailer. But then there's also, as you said, the longer demo that was from the EA event, and I didn't watch it live either, so I don't know. I thought they had like hosts for the EA Play stuff, and so I don't know if they talked to the developers and had like a little bit of a convo as far as the game goes there as well. But what I saw was, again, just the trailer and the gameplay demo. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's cool to get a look at it and all that sort of thing. So, let's talk about the trailer story stuff, I guess, real quick, and then we can kind of get into the gameplay and what we think about the game. It continues to look very good, I think, as far as the visuals go, and it's, the production values are extremely high, and looks great and on that level. And then at the end of the trailer, we see Saw Gerrera, which is like
Mhm.
pretty cool and pretty surprising. I didn't expect that. I don't know about you,
Yeah.
Ryan, but
He shows up in a lot of things these days.
yeah.
It's pretty crazy, because I mean he was in Clone Wars and then obviously Rogue One, but then since then he's been in like Rebels, he's been in the mainline Star Wars comic book from Marvel, and now here he is again.
Voiced by Forrest Whitaker, so he
Man,
must be just enthusiastic about jumping in and playing Saw Gerrera whenever the opportunity arises, I guess.
great.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's cool.
Yeah.
So, and it's definitely one of those things where it's like, well, we knew the game would be, canon or whatever, and that they were very focused on storytelling, and that, they wanted to contribute like a legitimate and worthwhile story to, to the overall kind of Star Wars universe with this game. But knowing that they're bringing in Forrest Whitaker and bringing in, characters from the movies and TV shows and stuff, I think it's promising in terms of the legitimacy, I guess you'd say, of the story, like how much, where they're going to go with it, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that being said, I still feel like it's going to be a video game story or whatever. And so I don't know, If I mean, I guess the story is, kind of at the forefront for them, the developers and stuff, because they talk about it a lot, but to me, when I'm going to go into Jedi Fallen Order and I go into a video game, like looking at it primarily as a video game, like, will this be fun to play? Will this be a fun experience? And I'm less focused on, how will this expand my understanding of the Star Wars universe or whatever. But if they can give us the best of both worlds, I guess, then that's great too.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the Star Wars films are kind of video game stories in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, but okay. Attack of the Clones, yes. Your favorite Star Wars movie, Attack of the Clones, yes. Yeah. Then yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I as a very quick aside, I was listening to the Steel Wars podcast recently, a bonus episode, and there's a show on the Patreon feed for Steel Wars called the Robbo Report, which is really fun and a great show. And so Robbo, his guest on there, was talking, or they were talking about the idea that like Star Wars video games and the prequels in some ways too maybe have influenced like a certain generation's expectations for what they want to see in a Star Wars movie. And they were talking about how the sequel movies don't really have like super flashy, lightsaber battles and stuff like that. And they feel like certain, fans, a certain segment of fans, you kind of expect that because like if you grew up at a certain time, maybe like your big, Star Wars experience was like watching, Clone Wars and watching the prequels more than the original movies, but then also playing games like Force Unleashed. Yeah. And it's like all this crazy, like high intensity, action stuff. And it's like, then maybe you do go into The Force Awakens thinking like, cool, let's see some of that, Force Unleashed style action on the big screen. And it's like, to me, that's not really what Star Wars is, but I guess, to some Star Wars fans, maybe that's been more of like what their formative experience with Star Wars is kind of focused around. But I would say like you watch like The Force Awakens or, any of the Disney era Star Wars movies. And it's like, no, they're not really like video games at all. I don't think very much I know you were kind of joking when you said that, but I think that the focus is more on the storytelling and less on the spectacle in those movies.
Yeah, I don't know. The Millennium Falcon scene, the chase in Force Awakens is pretty dang video game.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, I think you're right. Like, and I remember like there is like that segment of Star Wars fans that are like the cutscenes from the Old Republic are the best Star Wars movies ever made. Like for the MMO, like I've definitely seen that take, which, each to their own. But no, I think there's something to that. Yeah, for sure. And, like I know people do talk about like a lot of like fans of Clone Wars and stuff are fans of like the characters and their arcs and all that, but at the same time, like I had been rewatching that series. There is like ridiculous action in it and ridiculous use of like force powers and stuff that's borders on absurd a lot of times, especially with Anakin. Like he does some of the most ridiculous things on that show that I don't think we would ever see in films.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think like I was watching the gameplay demo for Fallen Order and there was like, I don't know that there was too much, force power usage where I'm like, I don't think a, force user, Jedi, whatever, in the Star Wars universe ought to be able to do that necessarily. But it's just like, sort of constant, because it's a video game. So he's like force pushing stuff all over the place. And it's just like, supercharged, like super powerful, kind of Jedi, whatever power stuff. And that's fine because it is a video game. So it's like, well, that medium, kind of lends itself to that, or like that's the best way to sort of, bring this into a video game probably. or a good way to do it, I guess, anyway. And so like it makes sense. But the idea that, you know, I would play this game and then be like, okay, now when I go see the new movie, I want to see, you know, something that's just like that. Um, I can see where people would feel that way potentially if they spend a lot of time playing games like this. Whereas, you know, for me personally, I'm kind of like more like, well, I'll accept this crazy force power usage and like over emphasis on force powers because it's a video game and I'm controlling it. And so it just kind of makes the most sense to emphasize that stuff. Whereas like if I'm going to watch a story unfold, I don't want to see some dude just running around being like, look how OP I am. Like, whoa, I'm pulling, you know what I mean? Like just, I don't know. That's not what I'm looking for in a movie. But yeah, the Clone Wars, I mean, or Star Wars animation or whatever, it's an interesting, or even Star Wars comics too. It's just an interesting thing to consider. Like, well, you know, whatever medium it is we're looking at, sort of what is the best way to kind of tell a Star Wars story or express like the Star Wars kind of thing, you know, because they all have their own sort of strengths and their own kind of, I don't know, different elements that make up like what, you know, what is the experience of reading a comic book versus the experience of, you know, playing a video game. And, you know, the cartoons are interesting because they are the closest probably to a movie of all those different, you know, like books and comics and video games and all that stuff. But, you know, also have the opportunity, of course, to do things that are a little more stylized and a little more exaggerated than you would do in a movie. And it makes more sense, I think, to do that stuff in a cartoon. So, yeah.
But it also all like, again, like it all kind of comes back to like Star Wars as myth, and like these are stories told, and they're told in different mediums, like you were saying, but like they're told by unreliable narrators always. And I think that's like the fun way to look at it. Like you think of like the kids at the end of The Last Jedi who are like playing Luke Skywalker, and it's like, well, I don't know, kids. Is that really canon? Like what you're doing here with your little toy figure? You know, that's not what the history books say. But you know, like that's I don't know. That's, I think, the most fun way to like look at Star Wars. And you know, because there are discrepancies even within the new canon. And especially with the old EU, like there was a lot of contradictions, but I mean, you have to just kind of roll with it and think of them as like myths from, you know, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Like we're just telling those stories the best we can. So yeah. It's fun.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Okay, well, let's talk more about the gameplay, I guess, sort of itself. You know, Ryan, you play a lot of, I feel like I don't play a lot of like AAA high budget, you know, combat focused video games, like modern video games or whatever, you know, and I don't feel like I have like that great of an expertise on this sort of thing, but I know you've played other games from this developer and you kind of just have more experience and knowledge of these kind of games. So what were sort of your impressions of the gameplay footage overall?
Well, I mean, the thing that like I texted all of you after watching it was like, yep, this is a video game. Like this is a video game in 2019. No, it definitely has that that sort of feel of you know, like in some ways, like it reminded me of like Uncharted, and that whole you know, style of third person action adventure game. But it really, like with the movement and everything, like it looked like a Respawn game. Like you had like wall running and like you know, the jumping and everything. Like it the traversal and parkour were very Respawn-esque, like their work in Titanfall 2 and to a lesser extent Apex Legends. So like it was honestly kind of exactly what I expected. Like there was like when I started watching it, I was like, yeah, this is like exactly what I pictured in my head, you know, with this developer, with this publisher, with this budget, like, and like I'm super excited for this game. I can't wait to play it. I I think like the experience as a whole is what's really going to matter in the end. And by that, I mean, like, you know, the twists in the story that they're obviously not going to be revealing now. Um, like the surprises, the locations, the building your character, and you know, customizing your character and like the skill points or skill tree or whatever they're doing, and customizing your lightsaber and like all that stuff, like kind of the personal experience you get from playing the game, I think is what's really going to you know, make it matter in the end, because like we knew this was going to be like a fun playable game with super high production values. We knew that. And then like, you know, since April we've known what like the story and everything is for the game. So like those are all like known quantities. I think what it's going to come down to is like actually sitting down and playing the game when that happens, and the experience as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I pretty much agree. I definitely felt like, oh, this looks like, you know, a modern AAA video game. Like it felt very much, you know, like I said, I watched most of the Xbox conference, you know, and saw a bunch of gameplay footage and stuff. And it's like, if you take the Star Wars kind of like sheen off of it or whatever, it feels very much like, you know, a lot of other video games, I guess you'd say. And I think like the Star Wars aesthetic and the Star Wars like setting and all that kind of stuff is enough to differentiate that it's like, well, okay, yeah, it'll probably be really cool. And if you're huge into Star Wars, as we are, then that'll probably be really fun and exciting and whatnot. But in terms of like the moment to moment gameplay and stuff, it was definitely one of those things where I was like, if this wasn't Star Wars, is this a game that I would probably play? Like, I don't think so. It like doesn't seem like the kind of thing that I would necessarily be that interested in. But again, you know, I think it probably is very similar to the kinds of games that like the biggest chunk of the game playing audience or like gamers or whatever are into. I think it'll be hitting a pretty sweet spot for, you know, like the broadest audience of kind of like modern video game players or whatever. So I think that's good. And you know, there's just always for me like, well, actually, I think I would probably relate it to Battlefront 2, because Battlefront 2 is like very much not the kind of game that I would probably play either. But I bought that game, and because it had the single player, you know, campaign or whatever, I played a lot of that, or I played all of that, and I really liked it. You know, I had a lot of fun with it, and it's like that's another example of a game like there's no way I would have played that game if it wasn't Star Wars. You know, it's just not really my thing, and I liked it a lot. I didn't like it enough that like if it wasn't Star Wars, I probably still would have played it. But like it was Star Wars, so I did play it, and I did really like it. And I'm expecting something similar as far as this goes. But then it's also like, well, you're a Jedi, and so I'm like watching this, and like I'm hearing the Star Wars music, and I'm seeing like the Star Wars environments and characters. But then I'm watching this guy just like force push everything in sight, and like throwing his lightsaber into people and pulling them. Like he was like pulling like grabbed a stormtrooper and pulled the stormtrooper to him and like impaled the stormtrooper on the lightsaber, and he's like doing these like lightsaber thing, like, and it's just like, this is like Star Wars but not, you know what I mean, because it's so just like, I don't know, it was a weird kind of experience for me watching it, because I was like, it's 90% of this is Star Wars, but then there's like this other 10% where it's just like, it just felt kind of weird, you know what I mean, because it's such an exaggerated version of like the whole Jedi, I don't know, kind of thing. But that's just being kind of, I mean, it's not a problem. It's just like what a Star Wars video game probably is going to be, unless, you know, they're really setting out to kind of recreate the exact experience of watching a Star Wars movie, but then that probably wouldn't be a very good video game. So I think it's just part of, you know, the way it goes when you're translating something like this.
And that's the history of Star Wars video games. I mean, really, like the SNES games are like just platformers with ridiculous. So like, I mean, you're just running through slicing up Jawas. Like that's.
I had that exact thought earlier today because I rewatched it earlier today before we recorded, and I had that exact thought. But it is one of those things where like now that the fidelity of this and everything, it's getting so. It looks so. I mean, like you have this actor Cameron, I forget his last name, but playing this lead role, and it's like in 2019, you have an actor come in and play a role in a video game, and it's like you're just watching that actor on screen. You know what I mean? It's not. There's very little abstraction between like the reality of it and what you're seeing on screen versus even in like the PlayStation 2 era or whatever, even the PlayStation 3 era, it would be a layer or multiple layers of abstraction. It's like it's just getting so close to visually like looking like the movie that when it's what I mean, so video gamey, it just versus like a 16-bit side-scrolling Luke Skywalker doing double flips all over and cutting down Jawas. It's like, I mean, it's ridiculous, but it also doesn't really feel very much like I'm watching the movie. Versus now, just with it being so high fidelity, it's like I think it ratchets up that sort of like, I don't know, that feeling of dissonance, like, oh, it's like it, but not quite like it. You know what I mean? Versus like the 16-bit thing was like nothing like a Star Wars movie. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was thinking that too. I need to think about this like an arcade game or something, like if I was playing some Star Wars arcade game from the 90s or a 16-bit Star Wars game from the 90s or whatever, I would want it to be just like action, player control. Like that's what I would be looking for. And this is like a modern version of that in some ways. But it just doesn't, I gotta like think, you know what I mean? I have to like intellectualize it like that for it to feel right to me. Cause otherwise I'm like, no, Jedi don't do this. They don't just like run around like, I've never seen or thought about like the fact that a Jedi would, end 25 lives with a lightsaber in the span of 4 minutes. Like he would just run around indiscriminately, like cutting people in half just because he could. It just doesn't feel like Star Wars, but maybe it does feel like a Star Wars video game. So,
well, yeah, that's I mean, that's kind of like the Gendy Clone Wars, which is like so absurd and over the top. Like I would have gotten like a cell shaded Star Wars game that looked like that at some point. That would have been amazing.
That would be really cool.
Yeah. I mean, like the Uncanny Valley stuff and like the violence was okay last generation, but now it's too real. Like that's been going on since like Mortal Kombat and Doom. Like that's always been a concern, and we feel that every generation and every generation we're like, this is as good as video games are gonna get. Like Final Fantasy VII, this is the best looking video game of all time. Like it's never gonna look better than this. And then, it always does. And somehow, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so the game comes out, November, right? I have it pre-ordered. I'll definitely be picking it up like immediately and playing through it right away.
Amazon has a pretty good pre-order price on it right now. I think I pre-ordered mine for like $49.
Yeah,
like the week of E3. So
I did too, but I just saw something earlier today or this weekend where apparently Target right now is doing 30% off of pre-orders of certain video games, and I think Fallen Order might be one of them. So, I don't know, like what if it's $60 and you get it for $50, that is like a little more than 10. No, that's like close to 20%, right?
Yeah.
But so maybe you could get it for, I don't know, what, 30% off of, maybe like $18 off of a $60 game, I think, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, low 40s, probably something like that at Target right now, if I'm right about that deal. So, but yeah, I have it pre-ordered. I'll be playing right away. I think it's the same week, like it's within 5 days of The Mandalorian dropping on Disney Plus.
And there's like a bunch of books as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be a pretty wild time. So that'll be exciting. But probably playing this on Thanksgiving break. If how long do you think it'll be, Ryan? How long of a game do you think this will be?
I'd say
20
like
hours?
probably not. Like I'd say like 8 to 12
Oh,
would be,
perfect.
or yeah, maybe 10 to 15. But like I think like Titanfall 2 was like 5 hours
Oh wow. Okay.
for the single player mode. And what was Battlefront 2? Like 8?
I think if you were good at video games, maybe it was like 6 to 8. It probably took me like 10 to 12 or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then I want to say too, by the time I actually played through the campaign or whatever, was there already like DLC that came out a couple weeks after?
It was like a week after, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. By the time I played like all of it at once, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe that extended the amount of time too. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want it to be 25 or 30 hours long or anything like that. I don't need it to be super long. And so if it's like 10 hours or whatever, that's kind of perfect for me. If it was the kind of game that seemed like it was more exploration and puzzle solving with some combat involved too, like every 10 or 15 minutes you come into an area with some enemies and there's some combat and then you do more exploring, and then I think I could go for a longer game. But these seem like they're going to be 20-minute long levels where you're just plowing through enemy after enemy for the most part. So I don't need that to be super long.
Yeah, I wonder if like what there's going to be as far as like replayability. Because that was kind of a bummer with Battlefront 2. Is like after I finished that game, there was like no real reason to go back and play through it again. Like the only reason would be to like see the story again. But there was no new game plus, there was no like character customization, there was like nothing new in a replay. So I hope that maybe since there isn't like a multiplayer component, there is like something extra to this game that would like encourage a second playthrough. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I guess that's probably the kind of thing they would announce a little bit closer to release date, huh?
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be good. So Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, that's the big, big budget, high production value, very exciting, like AAA Star Wars game that's on the horizon. But the one that I'm probably more excited about, actually, and this is like, what a serendipitous thing, because Elliot just walked in to show off this Lego pod racer that he just made.
Nice.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Owen made it. So this is Anakin's Lego pod racer here. The game that I'm more excited about is Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, which was announced. That was announced at the Xbox conference. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
It had been rumored, leaked prior, as pretty much all like new announcements were were this E3. But yeah, it had been rumored and leaked, but then like we actually saw it and it was cool. So this is going to be a Lego game that spans all 9 movies of the Skywalker Saga. It will be coming out in 2020, so post release of Rise of Skywalker. So hopefully that means they'll have like some more freedom to play in that sort of universe and that story. And I think like the most exciting part of this was the fact that characters are back to babbling. There's none of the like actual voices or approximations of the character voices from the films. Like they're back to babbling, so they're not like as beholden to the scripts of the films, which is a good thing because this means they can do like more weird comedy, which I think was something that was fantastic in the original Lego Star Wars games, and I feel like it was kind of lost a bit in the Force Awakens Lego game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of back to the whole conversation about, which we don't need to get into again, but it just, kind of reminds me of the whole thing as far as like, what are the strengths of a video game versus the strengths of a movie versus the strengths of some other medium. And so trying to bring in like these, the actual voice actors and stuff from the movies and bring in lines of dialogue from the movies and all that stuff into these goofy Star Wars, Lego Star Wars, like kind of stories and experiences. It was like, I think it did work in a lot of cases, but then in other cases, it was just sort of like, yeah, we don't really need that. You know what I mean? It's more, yeah. So yeah, Lego Force Awakens, I just played all the way through for the first time, a few months ago, and I loved it. It was a lot of fun. I played with my younger son, and that was really fun. But again, a lot of times I think it worked really well to have the high production value, like voices and all that stuff. And there was a lot of times where it really felt like, oh man, like some of the space battles and stuff, it would feel like very much like, wow, I'm playing through this experience from the movie. But then other times it's like, I'm building this weird contraption to bring water over to this area. It's like, I'm not playing a Star Wars movie right now. I'm just in this world. And so, yeah, I'm into the idea that they're just going to focus on maybe like the Lego Star Wars side of things and not trying to bring it too close to, reliving the experience of the movie or whatever through, voices and, stuff like that. They're just going to lean into the goofiness of it a little more, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And I think the big question that I guess we kind of have an answer to, but it's still a little bit murky to me is, is this completely 100% new, or is some of this content going to be recycled from previous Lego Star Wars games?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's new, especially like they were showing stuff from the Force Awakens that's not in the Lego Force Awakens game. Yeah. So I'm hoping it's just like a totally new thing, but then they've already made Lego Star Wars for like 7 of these 9 movies. So are they just redoing everything, or are they going to be, it's a little bit, I'm not exactly sure what to think about that. But then again, I mean, it's on these like next gen, super high fidelity consoles, and the original Lego Star Wars, like, wasn't that a GameCube game or something? Like,
yeah, it's like GameCube, PS2, Xbox.
Yeah, and I know like those games are available to play on modern consoles and stuff, but it just sort of feels like the opportunity now that the saga is ending, or complete, the 9-part saga is complete or whatever, that like, let's just do a modern version of this whole thing, and obviously probably spend less time on each movie, but just kind of start from scratch and do the whole Skywalker Saga in Lego Star Wars form. So, and we haven't really, like, there hasn't been a new Lego Star Wars game since Force Awakens in 2015. But like the whole Lego game thing, there hasn't been as much of that lately, right? At all?
No, it's still happening. It's just like, it's all like superhero games for the most part.
So they're doing like Marvel's Lego super. Okay.
They like the most recent Lego games are like Lego Movie 2 had a game. The DC Supervillains game, and then they just released like a collection of all the Marvel Lego games for like PS4 and Xbox One.
Okay.
So like they're still putting out those Lego games, but yeah, it just seems to be like very superhero focused, which I mean kind of makes sense because that's what that demographic is mostly into these days, like the younger, like that, that sort of sweet spot that Lego hits of like, like parents and their kids is like, I think like the genre, like the demographic. And that's kind of what everyone's into. Like, I don't think we're going to be seeing anything like Lego Indiana Jones again anytime soon.
Yeah.
which was a weird thing.
Oh, I think it's awesome. Although that being said, I don't think I ever played it, but I love the idea. I love the idea of like a really great Indiana Jones video game. I could definitely go for that, like a new one, you know. But no, I think I forget the game that they had that was kind of like their Disney Infinity, but their Lego version of it or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the opportunity because they had like Back to the Future and Gremlins, and they brought in all these different, you know, that was probably the place where, yeah, if you were going to be seeing some Lego interpretations of, you know, not like of stuff that's not exactly the biggest, most popular thing in pop culture right now, that's probably where you were going to get it, not in standalone games in 2019 or 2020. But yeah, and you brought up, Ryan, the idea that like because the game is coming out in 2020, it can feature some great like rise of the rise of Skywalker content, which, you know, I'm sure it will. Obviously, it's being billed as the Skywalker Saga in all 9 parts and all that kind of thing, and I'm sure that's why it's coming out in 2020. But it's just like seeing this announcement, I'm thinking to myself, like, so are they working on Rise of Skywalker content right now, or is this one of those things where like they're doing 80% of the game and then like JJ's going to let them like look at some Rise of Skywalker stuff in like November to start working on it to get it out by June of 2020? Like, I wonder what kind of access they have, you know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, modern video games take a real long time to make, so they definitely have to have, you know, they have to have something
Yeah.
to like work off of. But I wouldn't expect to see like any of the major twists from Rise of Skywalker end up in the game.
I don't know. I think if you're making a game called the Skywalker Saga and it's like the whole 9-part thing, like you have to have the end of the final movie
maybe
in there.
that stuff will be like DLC.
That and I was actually thinking that too. I mean, obviously it's not what they're doing and it's probably for the best, but it would have been interesting if they would have put the game out like, you know, with the first 8 movies in it, and then, you know, as like a free download in March or April or something, you get the episode 9, you know, levels or whatever. But I don't know, there's something to be said too for just giving people a complete experience when they buy the thing instead of, you know, giving them something that's 80% done and then promising the other 20%, you know, a couple months later or whatever. But I think as long as it had been free, I would have been pretty into that idea, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't be ready by then anyway. So I guess it works out, but
yeah.
Well, so yeah, I mean, but like I said, I'm really excited for this, probably more so than Fallen Order, to be honest. I think I'll have a lot of fun with this game. So should be great.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Then we get into another surprise announcement, which is definitely cool. It's one of those things where like I first saw it, and this is the limited run Star Wars games re-releases. It's one of those things where I first saw it and my mind started going to all these places as far as like what it could be. Basically Switch, like I wanted Switch releases of games, and then it turned out to be not quite that, but it's still pretty cool. And it's for those who don't know, Limited Run Games is a game publisher who makes physical copies of usually digital only games, and they do them in small runs, which is why it's called Limited Run. Although these days they're getting a little more, I feel like they're expanding that more. You can start to get like limited run games at Best Buy sometimes, I think. And they do now. They used to do, they would be a limited run, like we're going to do X amount of copies of this game, and they go on sale at this time, and they're on sale until they sell out. Whereas now they'll do kind of like a pre-order window where it's like, okay, we're going to put the game on sale on this day, and as many copies as people order from this day to this day is how many we'll make, sort of thing. So they're expanding how limited these runs are as they go, which I think is good. But yeah, they're just a publisher that makes physical copies of games that otherwise don't get physical releases, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so they have announced a deal here with Lucasfilm to do a bunch of Star Wars games and a couple of non-Star Wars Lucas Arts games as well. So pretty sweet stuff. And let's see, the first lot of titles here is coming out at the end of the month, June 28th. So that's going to be Star Wars for NES and Game Boy and Bounty Hunter. Is that right? Is that the first?
Yeah, seems to be.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and so it's weird. Okay, this is where things start to get weird.
yeah.
So apparently they are like releasing the NES version of Star Wars. So like I'm assuming in like facsimile version of the box that
Mhm.
the original JVC release of this game. I'm assuming it will be on a gray cartridge, like an NES cartridge. However, I like a lot. There are like companies who have been releasing like NES and SNES games in particular recently. But I bought I think from Retrobit, I bought the Data East uh
Collection.
NES collection, and that it came on this like really weird looking black cartridge. So I'm wondering if it's going to be like an actual cartridge, like a gray NES one, because I know that like, you know, limited run, like they're into having like the authentic experience. Like their games don't look like cheap like knockoffs or anything. Whereas like, I don't know, this like black cartridge felt like, you know, like one of those you know, flash carts or something. um but then like also interesting, Star Wars for Game Boy, and that's a console that I don't feel like we've seen many like reproduction carts for. I don't even know like how you like manufacture a Game Boy cartridge in 2019. I mean, yeah, like that's been, you know, a dead console for like a while. And like I don't know, those are weird and small and uh okay. Like it's cool. Um so I'm really curious what those look like in both like terms of packaging and like the actual cartridges themselves. Like are they going to like reprint the actual manuals? Because something that is really cool about limited run games is even like the Switch and Vita and PS4 games that I've bought from them have, you know, they all come with manuals, which is not something we get with video games anymore. So are they going to do like new manuals? Are they going to reprint the old ones? Like how does all that work? And then they're doing Star Wars Bounty Hunter, the Django Fett sim. Um, they're doing the PS4 version, which is interesting because um, this was released digitally alongside Racer Revenge and Jedi Starfighter, and wasn't there one other Star Wars game that was released digitally on PS4? I'm blanking. Or was that it?
That might be it. Yeah, I feel like there are more because like when they do the May 4th sales on PSN and stuff, there's like a lot of. What was it? Super Star Wars.
Oh yeah, Super Star Wars was also released. And that was like the SNES game and a digital version of it on PS4 with like trophies, but it was also cross-play, so like you could buy it on PS4 and also get it on Vita, which was pretty cool. But anyways, so those were but like Bounty Hunter, Jedi Starfighter, and Racer Revenge were all those were, I believe, the PS2 versions of the games, like upresed and then given trophy support.
Okay.
Because there is or there was like that brief time period where Sony was releasing PS2 games on the PS4 digitally,
Mm-hmm.
and adding in trophies and like upresing the visuals and stuff. So it's really interesting that Limited Run here is going with like the PS4 version of Bounty Hunter, instead of doing like a PS2 reprint. I don't know.
Well, okay, so here's my take on it.
Mhm.
I think what I was hoping for is like, oh my God, Limited Run Games is doing like they're doing a bunch of Star Wars games. That's so exciting because then I'll be able to play like some of these games on modern consoles, you know? But then you think about it, it's like, well, that's not really what they do. They don't develop ports of video games for consoles they're not on. They
Yeah.
do physical releases of games that already exist. And so
Mhm.
what they're doing here is basically, they're doing a selection, a big selection, but they're doing a selection of Star Wars video games, and re-releasing them, I think, when possible, on a modern platform because it already exists on that platform. But,
Mhm.
Otherwise, so there's a lot of games on here that are like, for instance, Episode 1 Racer is PC and N64. Why? Because that game exists on PC and N64, so it just makes sense to do that. But like, as far as Bounty Hunter goes, like, I don't know, I think it's better to put it out on PS4 because like that's a system that people still play, versus if they put out the PS2 version, like, how many people have a PS2, number one, and then number two, how hard is it to get Bounty Hunter physical on PS2?
Yeah, it's like
not
a $5 game.
So it's not really
Yeah.
necessary to
Yeah.
re-release, so I think it makes sense to, if it's already out on PS4, like, sure, do a PS4 version, but otherwise, it's you don't really need to. You can just put out the either the original game if it's like, NES or N64 or something. Even then, I wonder, like, do you really need to re-release Racer on N64? Because again, that's not like a hard game to get.
No.
But I think because people are going to play it on PC, and they're going to re-release it that way, or they're going to do a release that way, then, just throw in the N64 version too because it's cool, and I suppose they could do that with PS2 also. Like, they could have put Bounty Hunter out on PS4 and PS2. But again, I just feel like disc-based games, like from that era, they're so cheap and available. You don't really need to, I guess. But
yeah, well, yeah, but it gets weird because there's like a lot of contradictions in this list, though.
okay.
Because then we move on to I'm just going down the list here. Dark Forces.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're releasing the PC version of Dark Forces. Okay, cool. So here's where my question comes in. So are they releasing like the big box version of it, which I assume they would be, because that's what I'd want as a collector. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't just want like a CD and a DVD case.
Right.
Like, I'd want like that big box experience with, the instruction manual and like the how to install this game thing. But then, like, are they releasing it on 3.5 millimeter discs for like authenticity?
No, yeah.
Or are they releasing it like, is it going to be a CD-ROM? Okay, well, what computers even have like CD drives these days?
Yeah.
So like, or is it going to be like a CD and then like a GOG.com code so that you can just go like download the game to actually play it?
Yeah, it is a weird thing, right? Because it's like PC, you don't put out physical like games on PC anymore, right? I mean, like, even Limited Run doesn't really put out PC games, do they?
No.
That I'm aware of, because like that's not a thing anymore. Like, physical media on a computer is just not a thing anymore. You download software and that's just how it works. Consoles, it's definitely more of an expectation, a physical copy of something, but yeah, the PC thing is really weird. I mean, I would think maybe they would have a disc just because it's so cheap to make a disc, and computers can still read software off a disc. You could, if you have a disk drive, like an external disk drive, or you have a machine that has a disk drive in it, you could put it in there. So, and I don't think it's that hard for them to like put an ISO on a disc or something. So, that's probably what they're going to do, I would guess. But it's not even really, I mean, they might as well put it on a floppy disk, because like the amount of people that are actually going to play the game off of the disk is like zero. You know what I mean? So,
I mean,
don't know.
is it even like, would it even work like running it off the disk in like Windows 10? Like if like, but I guess they'd have to put like the more modern code, like the code that GOG uses and stuff, and Steam to like, because you can't just take like a Dark Forces disc from 1994, put it into a computer and expect it to work now.
Yeah, right. Well, and so that I mean, and that, so that's really what the thing is here, is that this is about collecting packages for the most part, because in the exception of maybe the NES, Game Boy, and N64 games, like it's just about collecting packages, because these games are readily available on PC for low prices. They're available on PS4 for low prices. You're just buying this because you want the packaging, I suppose. And that's cool, for sure. But it is one of those things where it's like, this is a collector item. It's like buying a poster almost, or you're buying a limited run collector item because you want to collect it. They're not really bringing us the opportunity to play games that we didn't have the opportunity to play otherwise.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that most people that are going to buy these probably own these games, with a few exceptions maybe. But if you want to play TIE Fighter on your PC, you have it. You know what I mean? If you want to play Dark Forces on your PC, you have it. It's regularly on sale. Like those games are regularly on sale for like a couple of bucks. Like nobody is like sitting here thinking like, man, I really wanted to play this old PC game, and limited run games is giving me the opportunity to do that. No, you just want to buy a cool package for Dark Forces because you like that game, which I'm into. I like that too. Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, the couple exceptions are like the Nintendo games, because well, number one, there is no way to play Star Wars NES or Game Boy like legally, as far as I know. Like you can't download it from any software store anywhere, so you can play the ROMs on your computer if you download them from like a ROM site or something. But if you want to actually have like a legitimate way to purchase these games in 2019, I guess, that is something that this is providing. But, outside of like Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, that might be the only case where, I think those are the only two cases on this list where you couldn't just go download these games right now and play them. So in those two cases, it's providing a little something, and you're still not going to be able to download these and play them. You can put the NES or Game Boy carts into an NES or Game Boy and play them that way. And again, you could probably track down these games on NES or Game Boy for pretty cheap, I would think. Maybe not NES. I don't know. But
like you can get the cartridges for those games pretty cheaply. It's getting complete copies.
Yeah.
That's where it gets more expensive. But
the other thing is, we haven't seen the packaging yet either. It's kind of weird that they announced this and they didn't even show off like what the packaging looks like for even the first games, like Star Wars and Bounty Hunter or anything like that. Like, is it just going to be like a very...
We've seen the Bounty Hunter packaging.
Like the box for the game?
Yeah. Okay. They did show that. It just looks... It's the Bounty Hunter cover with a PS4 logo on the top.
And it doesn't come with like a poster, or I would think it comes with...
It might. It will probably... Like I said, it will probably come with a manual.
Okay. But it's just interesting because like in the press release or whatever, it says it would be putting out definitive collector's editions of these games. And it's like, okay, well, what makes the PS4 Bounty Hunter the definitive collector's edition if it's like a PS4 like DVD box? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I could probably just go buy the PS2 version and that would be just about as definitive, or actually more so, since the platform it released on for real,
Yeah.
So I'm kind of hoping that some of these are going to have like, I mean, limited run, they do a really good job usually with, making the releases feel pretty special. The only game I have from them, I think, is Night Trap on the PS4, but it was awesome. It came with like a manual, it came with a poster. It just felt like a really nice product, so hopefully, but like, generally speaking, you buy a PS4 game, it's just like a plastic case with a DVD inside of it, so if that's all it is and it says, Bounty Hunter on the front, that's pretty disappointing, I feel like. So hopefully there's a little bit of, you know what I mean? Like, just you want it to feel, I don't know, a little more special than that.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, let's just run through the list of games like real quick and just share our thoughts on them quickly. Star Wars NES and Game Boy. It's an okay game. It's not fantastic, but it's okay. This is one that probably a lot of us have played. I think there's footage of this on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah.
Maybe. So it's all right. It's kind of hard, as NES games are.
Yeah, it's a sketchy NES game, a sketchier Game Boy game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How about Bounty Hunter? Do you like that game, Ryan? Are you a fan?
It's fine.
Yeah. I played the first few levels a couple of times. I have it on my GameCube. I've played it on there sometime in the last couple of years. One of my kids was playing it. My wife was like, really? Should he be playing this game? Because it was just like Jango Fett like running around like lighting people on fire with a flamethrower. Speaking of things that don't feel all that Star Wars.
Yeah, it's pretty janky. Yeah. There's like a lot of I don't know, just like it was kind of rushed out the door, I think. As you know, movie tie-ins were. This was a Clone Wars tie-in game, or Attack of the Clones tie-in game, and it's also like kind of hard to figure out what you're supposed to be doing a lot of times.
Yeah.
But it's like barely okay.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
But if Fan Nice Cruise Night Chris was here, he would be defending it. I think he likes that one quite a bit. Yeah. How about Dark Forces? That's like awesome. Basically, Star Wars Doom, right?
Doom. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the most, there are other Star Wars first-person shooters that would come later. This is like the most Doom. It's super fast. It's just a lot of like running from place to place, like hitting switches and, getting key cards and unlocking new areas. And just like tons of stormtrooper murder, like stormtroopers popping out of everywhere. Your boy Kyle Katarn, his debut was here. I love this game. I think it's fantastic. It's still like really fun. Just because I think this game has aged better than some of the later Star Wars first-person shooters, just because it is kind of so like basic, and it takes that like speed and arcade mentality from Doom. And because I mean, like Doom was basically just like Contra in 3D, and that's kind of like what this is. And there's not like a ton of like puzzle solving or like platforming or anything like that would come in more so in the later games in this series. But I think it's still super fun to play. I love this game. This is one that I will probably buy from limited runs just to have on my shelf.
All right, when we get to the end, let's decide our 3 games we're going to buy from this list, if we're going to buy 3 of them.
Yep.
All right, so next one is Episode 1 Racer. Speaking of 3 games I'll buy from this list. Episode 1 Racer, amazing game. We got to do an episode on Episode 1 games, I feel like, coming up this summer sometime. So we'll talk more about Racer then, but it rules. It definitely rules.
So Episode 1 Racer, I have a question about this, because I've only played the N64 version. I know there's a Dreamcast version as well. That's not part of all this. But then there's also this PC version. Is the PC version the same as the N64 one?
That's a good question. I think I have it. No, I don't. I have Shadows of the Empire. I don't have Racer on PC. So
okay.
I don't know. And I actually played it on Dreamcast. I have an N64 cart now, but in the early 2000s, I was playing it on the Dreamcast and not the N64. So I'm more familiar with that version. I think they're largely the same, right? But
they're not, because the Dreamcast one, I believe, is based off the arcade game. from Sega.
Okay.
Sega's arcade game, and then the N64 one was like developed ground up for the N64 and had like all like the customization and all that stuff. And then I don't know what the PC one is based off, if it's based off the Dreamcast / arcade one or the N64 game.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
So who knows?
I don't know. We'll have to investigate that, but yeah, interesting. Empire Strikes Back for NES and Game Boy, pretty similar to Star Wars, same kind of thing. Yeah,
little sketchy, sketchy. I would say just go with if you want 2D retellings of the original trilogy, get the Famicom version of Star Wars from Namco. That's the one to get for 8-bit. And then like the Super Nintendo ones are just so much better than the NES and Game Boy ones, the Super Star Wars games. So
100%. And it's disappointing that those aren't being re-released as part of this, series of re-releases, especially because those are available. I think all three of them are on PS4, aren't they? Or at least Super Star Wars and Super Empire are.
Just Super Star Wars.
Okay. Yep. Well, it's disappointing those aren't getting re-released, but maybe there's the opportunity for that in the future.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so then next up is the Jedi Knight trilogy. These are 3 separate games: Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, and Jedi Knight Jedi Academy. But those 3 games, I feel like we could talk about sort of together here as we're just going through the list quickly. Outstanding games, right? People love these games, including you, Ryan.
Yeah, and all 3? Definitely including Chris as well.
Chris. Oh yeah. Chris loves Jedi Outcast.
Yeah. No, I like all 3 of these games for different reasons. I still think Dark Forces is more enjoyable for me to go back to.
Okay.
Just because it is like so much more simple. I think Jedi Knight is really, really cool, but it's also like really challenging just because of the design philosophies of that era of PC first-person games. There's a lot of platforming in it and a lot of like weird, I don't know where to go stuff in it. But otherwise, it's a cool game. Jedi Outcast is more is easier, I'd say. And then Jedi Academy has like some cool ideas and character customization, but it's also kind of like the least polished of those games. So
okay.
I like all these. They're not my favorites.
Gotcha.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Racer Revenge is next. That's the PS2 sequel to Racer. I have to recuse myself from the conversation. I can't talk about it because it was developed at Rainbow Studios in Phoenix, Arizona, and my Uncle Tom worked on that game. So, what can I say? I do have a Racer Revenge t-shirt in that closet back there. It's like a double XL or something crazy like that. So I've never worn it, but I could swim in it if I wanted to. And that is that came from my Uncle Tom there at Rainbow Studios.
I think this game is awesome. It's super underrated. It's, I don't know. It's, in some ways, I like it just as much as the original Racer, the N64 version, I guess.
Yeah.
In some ways, it falls a little short, but I think this game rocks. I played through it when it was released on PS4 because I got the digital copy. This is one, like, as much as I like this game, I don't really see any reason for me to buy it from Limited Run because I do own it digitally on PS4, and you can get like a PS2 copy of this game for like $5 complete. So I don't think this is one I would really pay out for, but it's a great game and I like it a ton.
Okay. Rebel Assault for PC. Is that like the FMV?
Yeah.
Didn't that also get a release on PlayStation 1?
Rebel Assault 2. Rebel Assault 2 did,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a wild game. Both of these are ridiculous video games.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Next up, the GOAT here, Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, being released on PC and N64. I don't know if Limited Run has done any N64 carts in the past, but that'll be cool, I guess.
Yeah.
I love this game.
Mm-hmm.
Just played through it. Of course, when we did our Shadows of the Empire episode of the Power of the 90s series a while back, I played through the entire game, which was great. But yeah, so that one is awesome. And I know a lot of people love that game, especially if they were early adopters of the N64, which if you weren't, what were you doing? And then the last two games here are TIE Fighter and X-Wing for PC.
Yeah.
And those are very beloved games too.
Yep.
I personally think they're really hard to go back to if you didn't play them at the time, because I've tried to play them a few different times on PC, and
it's so hard.
Man, I don't get it really. Yeah. I mean, I get it sort of like from an academic perspective, but I try to play it and I'm just like, no, this isn't fun. So I'm sure that I would have felt differently if I was playing these games on the PC at the time, but whole different world. So anyways, that's the list of Star Wars games coming out. There's a couple of, actually 4 Monkey Island games that are also getting a return.
Yeah.
So these are, what's the genre? What do you call this? Like
point and click
adventure
games.
Adventure games. That's right. Yeah. Point and click adventure games. Yeah. So so those are coming out too. So all right, you can choose 3 of these, Ryan. Which 3 are you going to purchase from Limited Run Games for sure?
Okay. I'm going to buy Dark Forces on PC.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to buy Shadows of the Empire on PC, especially if it's a big box edition, because I have, I have the N64 cart. I have a complete Japanese copy of Shadows for N64. I do not have a copy of it on PC.
Okay.
So I'll grab that, and then one more. I don't know, maybe X-Wing.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
Okay, so here's the weird thing for me. I have Episode 1 Racer and Shadows of the Empire both on N64 already. Like I have a cartridge sitting up there in the closet for both of those games, but I don't have packages for either one of them. And I love both of those games. I think I would have to go with both of those. Like I would want the N64 versions of both Shadows and Racer. But you do bring up an interesting, I don't know. I was never a PC gamer though, so I think I would go with the N64 ones. But the idea of like a ridiculously oversized box for like PC style box for either of those games, that sounds kind of cool too. So yeah, I could see doing those. I'm torn for my third pick because I want to go Star Wars NES. But again, I have a cartridge of that game. But I think it would be cool to get like a complete, like kind of boxed version of that. So that would be really cool. But then I'm like, sort of like, I just kind of want to get Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, just because even though I'd like have only played the first couple levels of that ever, it's just been like, man, there was a 10-year period where Chris Stevens, like he talked about this game all the time, and Jordan talked about it all the time, and people just talked about it like, oh my God, it's the best, So I just feel like it occupies a cool place for me for that reason. So, but then as far as like Bounty Hunter and Racer Revenge and those games, it's like, well, those are cool, but I feel like maybe I would just go get the original platform versions of those and physical if I wanted to for $10 or something, and not necessarily get the re-release. So for me, it's going to be like games that I really love and want to have like a cool collector version of. So I think I have to go with the N64 ones, and then it would come down to the NES or the Jedi Outcast for my third pick. So
nice. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what these actually look like, because I mean, who knows, we could be singing a different tune if like the packaging is like ridiculously cool,
right?
For these,
what the prices are too. What price do you release an N64 game at that you can buy on a digital platform for $5, but that is a physical card? Like, are they $50? Are they $30? Like, I have no idea how much they cost, but
are they $79.99? They were when they actually came out. Like, because wasn't Shadows of the Empire like $70 or $80?
Oh, I'm sure it was. Yeah. But, I mean, my interest just went to zero if they're $80 for the game that I already have. Yeah, I would probably track down an original boxed copy for that price.
Yeah, because I think like pretty much any of these you can get complete copies between $20 and $50.
Right.
So once it gets over that price, then it gets tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. Let's talk, Ryan, about the last kind of Star Wars game announcement from E3. And this was definitely a surprise, but I think super exciting. And not something I can probably afford, but I want one. They are, or it is, I guess, the Star Wars arcade, Atari Star Wars arcade games, arcade cabinet coming from Arcade 1UP. So if you're not like, following video games super closely, you might not know about these Arcade 1UP arcade cabinets. Then again, if you ever go to Walmart, you may, because they sell them right there in the entertainment or the I guess like the video game, electronics section of Walmart. But it's this company Arcade 1UP that makes not full sized, but like maybe like
3/4 of the size cabinet. Yeah.
3/4 sized arcade cabinet reproductions. And so they'll usually
like LCD screens.
We'll have like an LCD screen, and it has usually like maybe like 4 games on it or something like that.
Yeah, depending.
But usually it's not just one game; it's like a couple of games on a cabinet.
Yeah.
And so they're putting out a reimagining, I guess, cabinet for Atari Star Wars, which will include Atari Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi all on one cabinet. And this is so cool. Man, I think it looks great. I think the art on the cabinet looks amazing.
And that the controller.
Yeah, it's like what do you call it? Like a yoke or something? Like
a flight yoke. Yeah.
That looks fantastic. And these are not games I've played a ton. I've played Atari Star Wars a little bit. Because it was on a GameCube disc that came out as a pre-order bonus with, what game was it?
Rebel Strike.
Yeah, which was Rebel Assault 3 or Rebel Assault 2. Or not Rebel Assault.
Rogue Squadron 3.
Rogue Squadron. Yeah, Rogue Squadron 3 on GameCube. So you could play Atari Star Wars on the GameCube, which I did. But and obviously, people played these in the arcades at the time, and they're probably still around in an arcade here or there. But they're short games, that's for sure. But it would be so cool to have. Can you imagine, Ryan? You just like right back there. I had this.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, it should be noted that Return of the Jedi sucks.
Does it?
Yeah. That game is so bad and so hard.
Okay, because like Star Wars and Empire both have like vector graphics, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a certain type of game. It's a specific type of game with these like really like it's very unique to that time period. Like a really cool look, like black screen with like these, colorful vector graphics, and it sort of feels like you're playing through a Star Wars space battle, but like if you were watching it on like the little screen, like what do you call this screen? Like the like the God, what's the term I'm looking for? Like if you're the pilot in the X-wing, you have the cockpit like little targeting screen or whatever. It's like you're playing through on that. Yeah. So they look really cool. But then like Return of the Jedi is more like an isometric raster graphics, like totally different.
Yeah, it's like it's basically the jet ski level from Battletoads that everyone hates.
Okay.
It's basically that. It's like isometric dodging trees on a speeder bike, and it's so hard and so not fun.
And that's the whole game.
Yeah.
Well, as much of it as you've seen, anyway.
I've never beat the first level, so I don't know.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
But and I think like Empire is similar to the original Star Wars arcade game, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, because the original Star Wars arcade game is awesome, and I love that game. But I don't think I've really played Empire.
Yeah. So these are amazing, or the cabinet, I should say, like the product itself seems really cool. $500 it looks like it's going to be. They said it would be for under $500, but I'll link to the article here. But an article from toybook.com is listing them at $4.99 a piece. So although maybe that's for the cocktail tables that are being released for like Street Fighter and some Namco games. Those are the ones that are saying specifically $4.99. This was announced as under $500, so $4.99 is probably a pretty good guess, but I don't think it's totally specified yet what it'll be.
Yeah.
And then they usually sell like a riser too, because they're smaller than the actual. And then the riser's like $100 or something, probably, right? So
yeah.
I'm assuming this image that we're looking at is the full thing, like the cabinet plus with the wooden riser that they make to go along with it, right? So, I mean, you're probably looking at like at least 600 bones if you want to buy this cabinet for your house.
Yeah.
Which I don't have that, but I want to have that,
Yeah. And amazing. I think like what, a lot of times I see the argument of like people who are like, why not just go buy like an actual arcade cabinet, like the actual original cabinet for these games? Go on Craigslist or whatever, get it with like the proper CRT monitor and everything. And I get that argument, but there's two things about that. One, actual arcade cabinets are very hard to move and get from place to place. They also require maintenance. That is can be costly. A lot of the technology that's in those cabinets does not exist anymore when you have to replace parts. And there's definitely a know-how that's required to even do that. And the other thing is like, especially with this one, it's that controller is special. You can't just like replace the stick with like some Sanwa buttons and sticks. Like this is like that yoke. It's like, it's very specialized. So, and like parts like that, are extremely hard to replace. So yeah, I think like this is, I think the work that Arcade 1-Up do is awesome. I've played on their cabinets, at Walmart because they have them set up there, and everything I've played has like felt great. And there are a lot of these cabinets I want. I have no room for them. I have no money for them, but and yeah, like you can play these games on like other ways. Like it's not like, like I want the Mortal Kombat cabinet, but like, I own Mortal Kombat games on SNES and PS1 and Genesis. Like I own those games. Like I can play them in some form or another, but like there's also something cool about having an arcade cabinet. Same with like the Street Fighter ones and all that, like, and there's like, that's kind of, I don't know, special experience that comes,
sure.
But yeah, so I think what they do is great.
Man,
ooh,
that sounds
yeah,
so cool.
Replace our dinner table,
right.
Figure out room for that. Man, just to like be able to like eat pizza and like play games, best.
And now these do sometimes, I don't know about the Star Wars one if this will happen, but they do sometimes go on sale too, like I bet Black Friday Walmart will have sales on these potentially, or just other times like I've seen them go on sale. I've seen some of them like for in between $200 and $300. I think maybe you could get.
There was a time where the Galaga one went down to $199, and I was to the point that I was on Walmart's site checking to see if there was one available for pickup in my area. And I was like telling Lindsay about it, and she's like, where would we put that? I was like, I don't know, but I still might go get it.
Yeah, no.
But it didn't end up happening. But like, I was so close.
Yeah, no, for sure. If this thing ever dropped down to like, somewhere between $200 and $300, I think I'd just have to do it.
You'd have to. Yeah.
I could put it in here. I could fit 10 of these in here if I wanted to. So, in this room right now, I just line them up. I don't ever have to open those closet doors again. I could just line,
That's true. I could just put mine in front of my shelves of Star Wars figures, just right there. Yeah.
But come on, you got a corner somewhere in your house that you could shove this thing into. So
I absolutely do not. Like this, with all the crap that we collect collectively between Lindsay and I, we have like every space of this home filled.
Yeah.
But
all right. Well, it is an amazing announcement and product. It looks really cool. And hopefully I'll play one of these at the very least, if not ever own one. So but yeah, it's like you said, I hear that argument too, like just get the original cabinet or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, I don't know how to replace. I'm not going to solder stuff when it goes, and I'm not going to like track down a donor monitor when the monitor goes, and like I don't want to be replacing leaky capacitors and stuff. Like I don't want to deal with all that, and I don't know how to deal with all that. And I'm glad there are people that are doing that stuff. I think, the people that own and operate and maintain arcade cabinets and stuff, like that's amazing. I love that. It's so cool. And I'm so grateful that people are out there doing that stuff. But I'm not currently a person who does that. So the idea that I could, grab a facsimile that is 80% of the original look and feel of playing it and have it as a cool display piece and something fun to show to friends and hang out and play would be amazing, I think. So but so anyways, I guess overall, as far as E3 and Star Wars games going forward, it's pretty good week. Like a lot of fun announcements, stuff I did not expect. I had not heard about the leaks for Lego Star Wars, so that was a surprise for me. And definitely this limited run stuff and the arcade 1-up cabinet. Like,
who could have predicted that?
It's just like fun surprises. So there's been in the last couple of years, I feel like the prognosis, the temperature, the climate, as far as Star Wars video games goes, hasn't always been super great. I mean, had some canceled projects, and a lot of us feel like a lack of follow through or execution as far as EA goes with Star Wars games and that sort of thing. So but Fallen Order's looking pretty good, and there's other stuff too. I mean, I think that's maybe one of the best things about this week and these Star Wars game announcements is that it's not just EA. You know what I mean? Like we're not looking at, well, whatever EA decides to throw our way is all it's going to be as far as Star Wars games goes. I mean, it's still 90% of it, but we're getting some re-releases and we have a new Lego game. So, I think all that stuff is good and really fun. And we have Star Wars Pinball on the way for Switch too. So I think that should be great as well. And no doubt, Rise of Skywalker tables coming as well. And so exciting stuff as far as Star Wars video games go. So, I think we will wrap up episode 109 there, and we'll be back soon with more Blockade Runner podcast. Until then, you can track us down at blockaderunnerpodcast.com, and you can send us feedback to blockaderunnerpodcast@gmail.com. Also check the show notes. There is a link there to send in voicemails if you want to do that as well. We're on Twitter at Blockade Run. Ryan, you specifically are on Twitter at Braun Dwarf.
BRAWNDWARF.
All right, cool. So thanks for watching and or listening, and we'll be back soon with more Blockade Runner podcast.
Later.